Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your weekly instalment of the Gersnet Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans, and all of our content is absolutely free as always. You can get us over at gersnet.co.uk, where you've got access to the forum, some great articles, and a wonderful history archive as well. You can also get us on Twitter over at Gersnet Online. We are live on YouTube this evening, guys. If we could also give you a shout out to like and subscribe. And also, if you've got anything to say, please do let us know in the comments section as well. Before I introduce my wonderful guest this evening, I just need to give a shout out to our sponsors over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They are a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years. And we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forestprecisioneng.com. And you can also visit the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge, a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand. For information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. And my guest this evening, Mr. Ben Harshaw. Ben, sun's not been shining in our season this evening, but it's been shining the last few days at least.
Yes, as I was saying to Frankie there, just hopefully it's not shining on a leaf tomorrow. But yeah, I'm very glad this season is coming to a close. As fun as it's been for us all, of course. I have to apologise here because I know I'm very underdressed compared to Mr. Bradley from the other night. But there you go.
I know we can't all be dressed like him. I think he's got a personal shopper over at Slater's, but less said about that the better, mate. I mean, it's been another big, crazy, mental week, whatever words you want to use to describe it at Rangers nowadays. There's always something happening at our club.
Typical.
Will he, won't he? I know. Will he, won't he? The Don Jr., Davide Ancelotti, a few days ago, news broke that there was perhaps interest there. When I heard that, I kind of just ignored it, to be honest, because I didn't think anything of it. And then over the coming days, we heard reports in Spain and Italy saying that not only was he the front runner, but he'd basically accepted the job, and we're also naming all these backroom staff and what have you. Reports from here kind of cooled it a wee bit, said there was interest, they're in talks, but there's not been anything concrete there. Then today, more stories from Spain saying that he's decided to join Carlo for Brazil up until I think the next World Cup, and he won't be focusing on his managerial career. And then later on today, reports from back here in Scotland saying that things are still moving and as they were a couple of days ago. So it's been a bit hectic. In terms of our new manager search, though, before we get into the opinions of this guy in particular, do you think he will become the new Rangers manager? What's your thoughts on that?
It's a hard one. I'd be guessing. Like you, when I first heard the reports, I thought, no, that'll never happen. And then it sort of was gathering pace, and I thought, yeah, it is going to happen. I'm still going to say yes. I think it will happen now. Just there's been too much talk of it, for there to be nothing behind it. And I just have a feeling that yeah, it is going to happen. And yeah, we can get into whether or not that is a good idea.
Yeah, but on that, Ben, I'll just continue the question then. If he was to be appointed, do you think he would be the right appointment for the club at this time, moving into a new era?
Look, this is either going to be, if this happens, this is either going to be a stroke of genius or an absolute disaster. I think what my concern is, we're not, and it's a huge risk. Every management appointment is a risk. However, we're not in a position right now to be taking risks. This is this new dawn, and we need to hit the ground running. We need, we need success. So I'm warming to it a little bit more than when I first heard. I must admit. When I think about it, we've gone down the route in our previous manager of somebody that's proven to win titles. The last Rangers manager, put it this way, that's won a title, came in as a novice basically. And okay, he was given time, and he was given 3 years to do that. But I do think he certainly has good reports in terms of his coaching. He's worked at the biggest club in the world. He's worked at other massive clubs. He will have contacts galore. So I'm a little bit more positive to it now. If you give me a choice now between is that what I want and what versus something with a little bit more experience, then no, I would rather have that experience. But there's no such thing as a sure thing anymore. And I think it all depends on who he brings in and what the club is like as well. It's not just about who the manager is, because if we need to have things in place within the club with behind the scenes to be able to give any manager a realistic chance and the best opportunity to compete. So I think when Gerard, going back to Gerard, when Gerard came in, I think his backroom staff was crucial. Now, I don't think necessarily it has to be. We've had all this talk about we need a Rangers, needs to be Rangers man, and the manager needs to be a Rangers man. I mean, who we've got currently, you couldn't have more of a Rangers man than Barry Ferguson, and you couldn't have more of a Rangers backroom staff, and that's proven that it isn't the golden bullet and it isn't the guarantee. So I think we need to have that mix. I think like Gary McAllister, who came in with Gerrard, knew the league, knows Scottish football obviously, and the club, and I think that is very important. So I think if Ancelotti comes in, yes, he has experience in terms of coaching, and he will bring in good ideas and enthusiasm. And I think that's good, but who he brings in with him is important, and the fact that we've also got the director of football and stuff in place. I think it's given any manager a chance. I think the fact that we got that in before a manager is giving the manager a chance to succeed. Whereas, even when Clement came in, Clement was doing 10 different jobs, Bale was doing 10 different jobs, although I don't think either of them would have succeeded anyway.
Yeah, excuse me, I think that's an interesting point you make about like if he does get the job, having someone in the backroom staff, not necessarily it's a Rangers man or anything like that, but has at least decent knowledge of the league and the club. But I mean, in terms of his dad, I can think of two examples where he's done that, where he went into Real Madrid and made Zidane his number two, and he obviously went on to become the manager, and even at Everton as well, when it was Big Duncan Ferguson.
Yeah.
Those are two legends of those clubs who got what it meant to be there, and that obviously helped Ancelotti. Even at Chelsea, actually, guys like Ray Wilkins, you know what I mean? So his dad's got a history of doing that. So, whether he would do that in his own terms, obviously, that remains to be seen. For me, look, I'm not going to lie. As I say, I didn't expect it once his name was announced, but when the news broke that this was highly likely to happen, I was pretty gutted and disappointed. I've just got a really bad feeling about it, to be quite honest. I don't think it'll work. I mean, I want the guy to succeed, and I'm not going to be one of these people that if he does get the job and he's rubbish in a year's time, I'll be going, "Oh, I told you so," because I would rather that Rangers were winning things and maybe right in this place. But I just need to be honest. It's not something that fills me with confidence. And you might be saying you're comparing two different things, right, because of who he's worked under, but look at the arguments that people are making about why Barry Ferguson shouldn't be the manager. Not even talking about now. I'm talking about when he first came in. He's got no experience, etc., etc. And now we seem to be, going all in for this guy who also has no managerial experience. Look, it's not something that really excites me. As I say, I hope if he does come in, the guy does well, and he certainly needs to be backed by those above him, because two out of the last three Rangers managers haven't. And I mean, ironically, out of the last three that we've had, the very worst of them, and Michael Beale get back the most. So he does need to be backed. The problem again, and Barry Ferguson said it in his presser the other day, Rangers is not a project for anyone. We cannot be a project next season. And I think that there is a big difference, and people have been comparing it to Gerrard coming in, and I can understand that, but there is a big difference from where the club was the summer of 2018 to where we are now. As much as we always, we want to win the league and we need to win all the time, I do think there was maybe a realisation back then that, we are miles and miles and miles behind Celtic and we're nowhere near them. So this is probably going to take a year or two to get right. Now coming in, this manager's going to be taking over the Europa League quarter-finalists, right? A team that could have been in the Europa League semi-final, compared to back then when we were getting beat off jobbers in Luxembourg. So, it's changed. And, the gap with Celtic, as much as there is one just now, it's certainly not what it was in 2018. We've got a better head-to-head record in the league than them this season. We should have won the cup against them. They've only managed to beat us once in 90 minutes this season. So it's been the games against the other teams that have cost us, and that is what we need. And we need a manager to come in that can beat these other teams in the league, the crap teams, with all due respect. That has been our undoing, certainly this season. And I just think, I know the new owners will be coming in and they'll be looking at European revenues and European football. But see, Rangers, one thing that we've forgotten the last 3 or 4 years, the most important thing is winning the league. It's been better than Celtic. Everything other than that, Europe and what have you, it's a bonus. It's a nice thing to have if you have a wee run in Europe. We need to get back to winning leagues. And I'm just a wee bit concerned, Ben, that the appointment is, all right, maybe he's young, he's new, it could be exciting, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's a case of maybe trying to run, before we can walk. Let's just focus first on winning the league, getting back to the top of Scottish football, and then if we want to do stuff like this in the future to try and, bridge that gap between us and the other teams in Europe so that we can do better in Europe, fair enough. But we need to get back to winning leagues, mate, in my opinion. And I don't think this guy's going to be the one to do it, unfortunately.
No, I can't disagree. Can't disagree with anything you've said there. I think one of the concerns that I have, as good as a coach as he's supposed to be, it's going to be a hell of a culture shock, turning up at Kilmarnock or Ross County versus the Bernabeu. Now, he wasn't going to get a job like that first off, at Real Madrid. But what concerns me is that he's worked with his dad, obviously, I believe, at Napoli, at Real Madrid, a few other big clubs. But these are clubs where they're not, Real Madrid aside, they're not having to win. Napoli, Everton, teams like that. They're big clubs, don't get me wrong, but they're not expected that every single week they have to win no matter who they're playing, other than Real Madrid, obviously. And it concerns me that how he will cope with that. And I don't know also equally if he's used to the low blocks, the style of football that we're going to face continually. Because I know obviously again Real Madrid teams will be trying to get a point against Real Madrid and things like that. But on a consistent basis, that style of football isn't necessarily what ours is. So he's had no experience of that as well. He's had experience of, having. Obviously, we have more resources than most teams in the league, but we don't have the resources, obviously of Real Madrid. But what I'm saying is that we don't have that advantage that they have over every single team because we have less money than our rivals at this stage. So I don't know. It's a concern. It's a concern for me from that point of view. But when I look at the club and I think of this new, we're trying to start anew. We're trying to start afresh as a club. I can kind of see why we're doing that from that point of view. But what sort of concerns me with it is that I'm trying to see what way to put this, but we basically, my chain of thought has completely left my mind here. What I was going to say, if I was looking at it from a new club, not new club, but a new start for the club and a reset, I like the ambition and the idea behind this. It's just whether this is the right time. Now, if you give me a choice between going back to Gerrard, for example, and this, I'd be more in favour of this, primarily because I want to see us looking forward. I want to see us trying to look at the future and not look at the past. I think, we've of recent years, we've been too much like that in terms of looking at, do we re-sign Kent? Do we, all these sort of things? We need to be looking at moving forward as a club and not relying on, even to the point where, all right, Goulson moved on this last summer. We're still relying on some of those players like your Tavs and stuff. And we're harping back to 55. 55 has been and it's gone. I want this club to be looking forward. And I sort of think if you're going to Gerrard, it's not necessarily that you're only thinking of the past, but it's that you're not thinking outside the box. You're just looking at, oh, that's worked before. Let's do that. And because it's new, will be a new ownership and it will be a new board. Then I think it's important that we're seen to be thinking outside the box and not just going, oh, he's the obvious candidate. Because our last few managers, maybe not Clement to a certain extent, but Gio was the obvious candidate at the time. Dale was the obvious candidate at the time. Oh, we'll just take them. We'll just take them. And Clement, yes, maybe I'm wrong on that point, but from that point of view, I think this club is short sighted at times, and I want to see that things are changing, and I think things are changing by even looking at the likes of this, something new, something different, as much as it is a huge risk. It's exciting, and it's exciting that we're willing to explore these ideas. Now, I would hope that something else happens. But again, like you, if he gets the job, that'll be 100% behind him. All we any of us want is success, Rangers to be successful.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I suppose it is something different, and it is exciting because it's unknown territory, So there is that fear, but also excitement as well. I mean, you made an interesting point about like one of your fears, and that is like the pressure situation. And obviously, we know Real Madrid are like in terms of the size of the club. But what I would say is if Real Madrid get beat, well, they did get beat off Barcelona last week. They've completely bombed the league. They've had a terrible season. They've bombed the league, La Liga, etc. Who's going to take the flak for that? It's not going to be Ancelotti Jr., is it? It's going to be Ancelotti, and Ancelotti's lost his job. I mean, whether that was already in the pipeline or not, we don't know. But he's all right. He might have coached at big clubs and stuff like that. But if anything goes wrong, it's his dad that's on the firing line. It's not him.
Well, equally, we've seen the difference between coach and manager. Michael Beale's a good coach. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
He ain't a good manager. He was not able to make that step up, and he's proven that going to Sunderland as well. I know he started well with QPR and all, but we've proven that there is a heck of a difference between being a manager, being that figurehead, being that, as you say, your head's on the chopping block. You're responsible for this. Whereas, yes, it's all right with Steven Gerrard's the manager. Michael Beale can do things behind the scenes, but it's not ultimately falling on him. Basically, when you're the coach like that, like Ancelotti, Davide, Ancelotti, or Michael Beale, or whoever it is, you actually get what you get is you get all the credit, but you don't get any of the.
That's the thing. I mean, people are talking about, was it the sub that he made against, I think, Man City or somebody, bringing Hosselu on, and no, that was his idea. Right, but how many bad ideas has he had as well that Ancelotti's not mentioned? And of course, when I say Ancelotti, I mean Ancelotti Senior. It's going to be hard for me to say this in terms of just Ancelotti Junior and stuff like that. It's just weird because, I mean, like I said to you earlier, I mean, I didn't even know that he had a son until about a week ago, so it's quite an experience. But well, that's the thing. He supposedly was the brains behind that change. That's fine, but how many changes has he suggested to his dad and it's not paid off? Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti is not going to be in the media saying, oh, well, he told me to make this change and we ended up getting beat, because he's a manager. He wants to protect his staff. He also wants to protect his son as well, And just a couple of concerns. I mean, another one around him is more the sort of bravado. I don't mean of him personally, but the way that some people are talking him up. This supposed notion that I think Leeds, Leipzig and stuff like that are putting offers for him. Now, I'm not saying that has or hasn't happened, but I'm a bit of a football anorak. And as I say, I didn't even know this guy existed until about a week ago. So I'm kind of on the lines of, if I don't even know that this guy exists, how is he supposedly getting offers from Leeds and Leipzig? Or is that something that people are maybe just saying to try and, raise his stock a wee bit? And I know Guillaume Bally done a piece with STV, I think, this week, a wee interview, talking about, this, that, the next thing. And by the way, it's a great write-up of the guy. But Guillaume Bally said, and I quote, he's one of the most sought-after coaches in the world. Now, that's one hell of a statement. So I decided to try and put that to the test a wee bit for Mr. Bally, and I actually went on his Twitter, and he has uttered the words Davide Ancelotti on Twitter twice, and they've both been in the last 3 days linking him to Rangers. Now, if this guy's supposedly one of the hottest prospects in world football, and this guy's giving you a massive write-up with the Scottish press, do you not think you would have mentioned him a few times before, rather than just at that time? So that's something that concerns me. I'm not saying that, you know, he's guaranteed to be a failure or whatnot, but I'm just a wee bit worried that some of us are maybe going into this a wee bit too sort of trigger happy, very similar to Beale with the whole he's the brains behind 55, blah 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 blah. And I'm not saying it can't work, but I just don't want to see us fall into the same traps that we have before. In terms of the club now, you know, we're hearing people say it's about the structure now. It's not so much about the manager. It's more a head coach that we're looking for. That's fine. I mean, I'm kind of iffy about the whole sporting director thing, but that's neither here nor there. If that's the way the club want to go for it, but they need to do it properly. The thing that concerns me about it is when you look at the managerial shortlist, right? So surely, I'm sort of thinking out loud here, so if you're confused, fair enough, right? But surely in Kevin Felwell's mind, as the man that's basically in charge of the whole football operation, he's got a mind of what type of football we want to play, what type of players we want to sign, etc., etc. His job is to set the vision. So that tells me that if you want to set the vision, if you're looking for a manager, you'll have, you know, say 4 or 5 guys, your number 1 target down to your number 5 target, and you try and get your number 1. If it doesn't work, you go down, etc., etc. But out of those 5 targets, if you've got a certain vision for the club, surely it would make sense for those 5 targets, for example, to be of similar stature. Now, if we look at the supposed shortlist that we've got, it's Davide Ancelotti, it's Steven Gerrard, it's Rowe, I think the guy's name, at Sheffield Wednesday, Danny Rowe, maybe Kevin Muscat, don't know about that. Rose as well, Marco Rose, Sean Dyche as well. So these are 5 or 6 different managers who have all got sort of different experiences and whatnot. You know, Davide Ancelotti and sort of Sean Dyche, you couldn't get in terms of football philosophy and whatnot. So I'm not going to lie, that is a bit of a concern for me for the new sporting director coming in. It's that it seems to be a bit of a scattergun approach in terms of, you know, let's just see who we can get. In my mind, if you're going to do this, do it properly. If it's about bringing in a head coach and someone to you know, basically just drum messages into players and coach them properly, that's fine. But then why is there other managerial targets, not guys like Davide Ancelotti as well?
There should be similar characteristics.
Yeah, so that's just something that I think's a bit, you know, a bit confusing and concerning, I think.
No, I mean, I agree with you. If we're going down the route of head coach, which I think we will, primarily because I think the days of Sir Alex, the days of Walter are done in terms of manager that oversees the whole club. Whether or not that is for the right, I'm not 100% sure. I quite like those days, but I can see us moving down that head coach route. So yes, there should be a little bit more similarities, and the only thing that I would say is perhaps some of these names are just media speculation, and the more realistic ones, and Muscat would fall under that. Could be more of the head coach role. I think Gerrard could be a head coach. So I certainly hope Sean Dyche is not under realistic. But I think yes, I would like to see. I'd like to see that. It's kind of going back to what I was saying before about the ideas and the vision of the club. I want to see that the club has a thought behind what it's doing, and it's not just going, oh, he makes sense, let's go for him, or let's go for him, or let's go. You know, I want to see that it's a vision. I mean, we ultimately should be picking. I think any good club, and I know that we're only sort of getting set up in terms of the new regime and stuff, but I think any new club should have a list of, all right, this is who we want ideally. Okay, and if all goes well, he does well, and in 2 years he's moving on to the Premier League or whatever. We already have a list of people that have a similar vision, have a similar style, are able to come in, sort of keep the club going in the same way, as opposed to jumping from one complete style to another. Because then you run into what you also do is you run into the problem of, oh, I don't want those players, but we've just brought those players in. And we had that. I mean, again, come on to me was never going to work. But he also had players like Todd Cantwell who he clearly didn't want anywhere near the place. So what you need to do is have similarities between managers so that the club runs smoothly, whether a manager leaves because they're sacked or a manager leaves because they've done very well. But back to Ancelotti and the talk of him being one of the best coaches in the world or most sought after coaches in the world. One, I think, and linked to Leipzig and Leeds and whoever else, I think that's an agent's job is to put that message out there, at the end of the day. And I think that's what happens in this day and age. But I think realistically, if he was one of them, I don't think he's coming to the Rangers, I have to be honest. As much as we love to think he's not, it's not that he's not coming to the Rangers. He's not, if you really are the most sought after or one of the most sought after, you're not going to be at the Scottish League. It's simple.
No, that's very true. I just don't want to see us falling into the sort of old traps as we have before. But we'll see what happens. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on in terms of the new manager search. In terms, well, before we move on to the current manager, Ben, in terms of a name or names, what ones, if you were in charge, would you be thinking, right, all being well, you're my guy?
Out of the list that we've just discussed, I probably am Muscat, and I know that's. I think, and hindsight's wonderful. I think we probably should have gone there previously. I think for several reasons. I think, although he only had a short time, he has worked within the club, and I don't think that's essential, but it is a benefit. He's also, other than being with us, he has been in British football obviously for quite a while. And then also he's proven success, and also his style is quite good. It's quite entertaining, and I think Rangers should be entertaining. I know that I understand that under Walter at times we were pragmatic when we had to be, and we grind out results. And there's points of every season where that's okay, and any league winning side will do that at times. But the fact that we have so much more in terms of resources than 99% of the league, we should then be able to be expecting to be enjoying watching our team. And I'll be honest, Craig, when's the last time you've enjoyed watching us? It's been a while for me.
When we were only allowed at the house. When we were only allowed at the house.
Aye. Yeah.
That was the last time I enjoyed watching Rangers. I don't think I've enjoyed watching Rangers live for about 20 years.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even know if I enjoyed it back then, because I mean, I like McLeish and then Walter Smith when I was growing up. I played turgid football most of the time, yeah. So I don't actually think I've ever enjoyed watching Rangers in my whole life.
Oh dear, we're still here.
I know. Well, we're loyal. That's something. But no, I think Muscat's a decent shout. I mean, wouldn't be my first choice, but
who would?
I wouldn't be first choice for me is Gerrard. And I know you're saying the whole don't go back thing. Yeah, I get that. There are some times where going back doesn't work, but then there are a lot of times where going back does work. If you look at Dave,
but I also think you're going back. Yeah, no, I agree. But I also think you're going back to a totally different Gerrard, and to a Gerrard that has failed since, and also it's a completely different backroom staff. So we don't know what we're getting essentially.
Yeah, he's got a point to prove. He will think he's got unfinished business here, and I think the only backroom staff that you'd be kind of twitchy about is Michael Beale. I think most of the other ones, like Gary McAllister, I'm sure would probably come back in a heartbeat. Unless it's Michael Beale, for example, let's just park him. I don't really think the backroom staff for Gerrard would be too much of an issue, because I think it's important maybe for someone like Ancelotti who's no got experience of the club and whatnot. But Gerrard's came in, he's won the league with us before. He would have won the league with us again if he didn't leave mid-season. So I don't think the backroom staff is, a major thing for him coming back, if that was to be the case. But I do also think as well that in this country, in this league, at this club, we are guilty of overcomplicating things, and without trying to sound disrespectful, our budget is about 15, 20 times bigger than like Hearts or Aberdeen. Well, I suppose Hibs have finished first third this season, but I suppose the level below us, so it's not unrealistic to demand that we are gaining 95% available points against these teams. And I think we're guilty of overthinking these games at times. Yeah, you need tacticians and whatnot for the games against Celtic and the European games, but do we really need to be bringing in all these, fancy names, fancy coaches, this, that, and the next thing, fancy tactics, this style of play, that style, blah, 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 when you're playing St Mirren or when you're playing Motherwell? Do you know what I mean? I just think that we're so guilty in this country of overcomplicating things. And look at Real Madrid, right? What's the La Liga equivalent of like Ross County or St Johnstone, like Leganes or something?
Yeah.
If Leganes came into the SPL, they probably have a bigger budget than Rangers and Celtic, to be honest. Yeah. They might be used to a kind of a low block there, but the low block that they're coming up against is players that are worth, between 5 and 10 million quid, whereas up here in Scotland, it's, guys that are playing for their futures and their livelihoods rather than guys that are on incredibly good money there. So, it's, for me, Gerrard would be my ideal choice, but in terms of that list, I would take any of them except Ancelotti and Rowe for me, because I do think we need an experience. But
would you take Dyche?
I'd take Dyche. I think he'd be decent. Again, he's another. It's too much of a project. And as I was saying, there is no perfect appointment. There is no safe appointment. But you give yourself the best possible opportunity. It's like, if you leave your house door open and it gets robbed, you can kind of expect it to get robbed. You can still put all the precautions in place, your ring doorbell, lock your door, your house can still get robbed. So it doesn't matter what you do, it can still happen. But the fact is, you put the locks on, you put your ring doorbell on to give yourself the best possible opportunity that you won't be robbed. So as weird as an analogy as that might seem, it's like, there is no risk-free appointment, but you need to give yourself the best possible chance of success and short-term success as well. But yeah, it's been an interesting chat. I love to something.
Just losing you a wee bit there.
Was that, sorry, mate?
Sorry, we're just losing you. I was just losing you there a wee bit. But the record that Barry was going to take over, and we were all, whoever the three of us were on, were surprised and saying, "No, I don't think that's going to happen," and whatever. And then the next day, he did get appointed. And at the time, I couldn't believe it. But actually, looking back now, I can see why he was appointed, given that obviously the league was not mathematically, but was done. We were out of the cup, whatever. I don't think it was realistic for us ever to expect to win the Europa League, whether it was Barry Ferguson, Clement, or Guardiola. I don't think we were going to win the Europa League with that squad. So the fact that there was very little to play for, I think him coming in kept it interesting. I think Ibrox would be emptier than it has been the last couple of games, faster into the season, had we not brought somebody like him in that's brought the backroom staff and stuff. So I think in terms of keeping the fans engaged, I think he was the right man, and I think he's done an okay job. I think there's certainly elements that you would say he's done well in terms of galvanizing the club and the fan base, but I think equally when I look back, I think he's been a little bit preoccupied with, and I don't blame him to a certain extent, but preoccupied with the wanting to get the job. I mean, who wouldn't, of course, but I think in terms of, I think he could have done more in terms of team selections, and especially of late, and playing maybe some of the younger players or some of the players, the likes of Cortez, Danilo. Now, I agree with what he's saying, that you shouldn't just be handed it, and you need to be working hard and stuff. And I'm not saying behind the scenes, and none of us are, but I think he could have done more for the club by, let's have a proper look at those on a continual basis, than playing the best team that he has with a hope of getting the job, which I still think he holds out a slight hope. Now, do I think he's in consideration? No, I don't. I think he's done well. He's undefeated against Celtic in the two games. I think he did very, very well to get through the Fenerbahce, through the two legs. So I think it could have been a total disaster, and it hasn't been a total disaster. The home record obviously has been, up until the last two games, has been horrendous. And I think that's certainly the thing that I don't think he ever was really going to get the job unless he did go on some miracle and win the Europa League. But I think that the home record has been the thing that has kind of put the nail in his coffin in terms of getting the job. But you can see that Barry has tried and tried, and you can see that he's wanted to get the best for the club. So, mixed, but I think he's done a reasonable job, a decent job. And do you know what? I do think although he says he doesn't want to, I do think he could be a manager somewhere. I think he has the characteristics, as long as he's not expecting the players to all be Barry Ferguson's.
Yeah, I mean, I think he deserves at least an interview for the job. He deserves at least an interview. Now, look, when Barry Ferguson took over as interim Rangers manager in February, everyone was saying the same thing. The season's done. The league games, bar the Celtic games, are meaningless. So, that's whatever. But it was the Celtic games that counted and the European tie that counted against Fenerbahce.
Yeah.
He's unbeaten against Celtic and he got through in Europe when a lot of people were saying they should have probably just kept come on for an extra couple of weeks because he had a better chance of navigating that tie. And even against Bilbao, we were very, very unlucky not to go through. We should have had 2 penalties away in my opinion. If that Sterling penalty in the first leg's a penalty, it's a penalty.
Early.
Yeah, exactly. Should have had at least 1 penalty over there. I'd say 2 if you're going with the ref's logic in the first leg.
Yeah.
He set up very well against a very good Bilbao team who, knocked out the semi-finals but are finishing 4th in La Liga. They're a good team. And, I actually think there's something there with him in terms of tactically, see for the big games, he is a bit of a big game merchant, and I know the home record's been bad. No just been him this season for that. I mean, we'd lost something like 3 home games in a row, whatever, before that, one of which was to a part-time championship side. So, and again, my opinion on these games is, without sounding disrespectful, who's it we lost at home to Motherwell and at home to Hibs? I mean, you shouldn't really need to be a tactical genius to work the ones out. That's games that, in my opinion, the players should just be saying, right, Chernley, for example, I'm a £7 million player. I'm up against a left back here who's getting, a couple of grand a week, which is a good wage to normal folk like us. But in terms of a football player, do you know what I mean? They should be absolutely wiping the floor with guys like that. And if you multiply that over 11 players need to take individual responsibility for moments like that. And I just think with Barry, I mean, I'm not here shouting for high heavens that he must be the man to get the job, but I do think the way that some fans have acted on him, certainly online, it's almost as if they're just desperate for him to fail. And it's just like they're just laughing off the fact or the possibility that he could be the Rangers manager. Barry will never get the job. He's not blah, 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 blah. Look, I said to somebody a couple of weeks ago, I mean, I'm saying that now I think he should get at least an interview. I was saying, if he's unbeaten against Celtic, does he not deserve an interview? And people are saying no. I'm like, come on, have you seen our record against Celtic the last few years? And you've got a guy there that's beaten Celtic at Parkhead, which we've not really been able to do the last 10 plus years. He's unbeaten against a Brendan Rodgers Celtic team who seems to be unstoppable in this fixture. When you've got a guy that can do something like that, I'm not saying do everything you can to hang on to him, but I'm saying don't be so desperate to get rid of him, because you don't know when you've got something good. And I think in terms of the way that he's carried himself the last couple of months, him and the backroom staff, I want to personally give him a lot of credit. I don't think they're going to get the credit they deserve. He's not going to get the job, but for me, and look, he did leave in a bad way as a player. Yeah. Obviously, with the stuff away with Scotland and whatnot. And I think for him to come back and have that win at Parkhead, beat Jose Mourinho, I think for me definitely cements his legend status. Even, I mean, he was already a legend anyway, but I think that that's something now that, he's been able to say that he's played for the club, captained the club, and managed the club, and there's no many guys that get to say that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he is a legend. He was a legend before this, but I'm very pleased for him that he's had this opportunity. I'm very pleased. I was very pleased for him when we got that win against Aberdeen, because I didn't want him to somehow go through and not get a win at Ibrox. That he got a win at Parkhead. He took us through in Europe. He's done a lot in that period of time. And to be honest with you, one thing that I'll credit him with as well is making the hard decisions in terms of, I think if Clement was still in charge, I don't think he would have dropped Butland at all. And that needed to happen at that stage. It really, really did. So, that's a ballsy decision. And, credit, it was the right decision for the club, and for the team, and probably for Butland at that time as well, to be honest. My thing about him getting an interview and deserving an interview, I probably agree with you that he probably does deserve an interview. But Barry Ferguson won't want a token interview. Barry Ferguson will only want an interview if he's realistically having a chance to get this job, and I just don't think he does. I think Ancelotti's a big risk, but I think Barry Ferguson would also be a huge risk. So I just don't think I wouldn't be devastated if he did get the job. One thing we haven't seen is him in terms of signings and things like that. So it's hard to, again, Ancelotti hasn't done that either, but it's hard to kind of give him a job. It's such an important year. My thing is he's done brilliantly in terms of the draw and the win against Celtic. But he hasn't been able to address what has been our problem all season, which is beating the teams that we should be beating. And I think that's just going to go against him. If he'd have managed to be winning those games and then getting those results against Celtic, then it's very hard to argue. And it wasn't realistic that he was going to get a 100% record. Those players weren't capable of getting a 100% record in that period. But I do think that it's just fallen short a little bit. So no, I don't think he gets the job. But he's a legend. Thanks for his efforts, because he came in at a time when he really was needed, and has done well by the club.
No, definitely. But thanks for crapping all over my dreams there, Ben. Barry Ferguson being the Rangers manager. I can still dream, my man can still dream, but I do just think that I think the way that some people went on about him and had a go at him from his own supporters has just been a wee bit over the top, Yeah. Even the stuff with Cortez, do you know what I mean? Like when he came out and made that comment last week about basically he's no trying in training, the fans' immediate response was go against Barry Ferguson and stick up for Oscar Cortez. Oscar Cortez, a guy that's going to cost us £4 million, God knows what in wages, and has played about 5 games for Rangers, versus a guy who's dedicated his whole life to the club. It's like, who are you going to listen to in a situation like that? But I mean, I don't know if that's just the way that the bloody online world is nowadays, where everybody's mental. But I just think some of the stick that he's got for his own fans, and I do think he's proved a lot of people wrong, at least in these last 2 or 3 months. People that were saying he could never do the job, and people were saying that he was going to be an absolute failure. And at the end of the day, he's unbeaten in Old Firm games, and he's managed to beat Jose Mourinho. So it's no bad for a couple of months.
It's far from a failure. There's no doubt about that. He's done an average to decent job. He's not been excellent, and he's certainly not been terrible.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. And he's got one last hurrah tomorrow, Ben. We do have a game. Just another one of these games in this split, to be honest. Would you want to stick up with it? In terms of players and starting, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You probably have wanted to see a few more of the young players and fringe players play. He did bring on Danilo, Cortez, Bailey Rice on Wednesday night against Dundee United. Do you think now that the season's finished, he might just make a lot of changes tomorrow and, have a wee eye to the future next season?
No, I don't think he will. I think he would have done that by now. I think maybe I didn't expect it against Aberdeen because I know how important getting a win at Ibrox was. But I thought maybe against Dundee United, if he was going to do it, that he certainly would have done more changes there. So no, I don't really think that he will. I would like him to. Players that I would like to see playing are Danilo. I would like to see him getting a good 60, 70 minutes. And I know he started him up at Pittodrie and he was absolutely honking, but I would like to see him just persevered with, just to see, because I still, and I don't know what I'm fully basing this on, but I still do think there is a future for Danilo, and I do think there's a player there. He's going to need to start producing. But I do think there's a player there. I would like to see Nsiala play tomorrow. And I would definitely like to see Bailey Rice starting again. I think the three midfielders have been really good. I would take Connor Barron out. And again, this is not a slight on him or anything. I think he's had a really good. Connor Barron's had a really good first season with Rangers. I think he's been decent of late. But we know he's going to be there next season, and we know what he can bring. So I would like to see Bailey given a start tomorrow. Cortez, I would like to see get some form of minutes. Not sure that he starts it. But yeah, I expect him to play a similar team. So I'd probably be again Suter. I think will be there next season, and I would probably be playing Balogun with Nsiala tomorrow. I'd be playing, as I said, the same midfield other than Barron coming out for Billy Rice. And I'd probably Desser's got his 50th the other night, and well done to him. So I'd probably be having him on the bench and playing Danilo with Egerman up top. So other than that, I probably think it's the same team as Wednesday night, but those being the changes.
Yeah, and in terms of the team, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm kind of inclined to say that he'll probably stick with what he knows, but I mean, I would like to see the likes of Danilo and Barami start, but not to see what they can do, just to kind of put them out there to show that other teams that, hi, these guys are fit and they're available to sell. So come in and offer us money for them, please. Yeah, I just even with Cortez as well. I mean, all due respect to the guy, but we should be trying to hire Joe Beltrami to find some sort of loophole in that contract so that we don't get to sign him in the summer. I mean, you're thinking there's surely. I mean, these like contracts of football players have got to be hundreds of pages long. You're thinking that there must be some sort of loophole there, but then you remember who it was that was signing these deals, and you go, aye, they've probably done us a belter there, RC ones. But in terms of the team, I don't know. I actually think it'll be a pretty decent game tomorrow because it's two teams that, they're both nothing to play for.
Yeah.
Hibs will want to put on a show because it's the last game of the season. They don't like us. We don't like them. They're finished third. They've had a good season. Hibs Rangers end of season game. Nothing to play for at Easter Road. 5 each. Is that your prediction?
6 each this time. I'll go for. Yeah. Was 3 each the last time we were there as well. So it could be. Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be a good game as well. And all I would say is if these players are given a chance, this is their chance to go play. This is the least pressure they'll ever play for Rangers with. So go out there and show us what you got. I didn't mention Bajrami because I just yeah. Well, I know I'm trying to forget about him. But no, I just don't see anything there. So I just think, what's the point in even bothering? But yeah, I hope to see Egerman got a hat trick there last time we went there. So hopefully he can do something similar.
Yeah, no, hopefully he can. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. I think that's a decent spot to wrap it up there, mate. We'll be back on Sunday. It'll be all posting with Alec and Ross to review the Hibs game and any other news that may or may not come in the next couple of days. Ben, thanks very much for joining us tonight, mate. I think that might be us for the season after tonight in terms of us two. So it's been a pleasure to have you on despite how bad the football's been.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it when I've not forgotten what I was saying mid sentence. But yes, other than that, it's been great. Yeah. So here's to a better season next season.
Absolutely, and don't worry. Not being able to do it under pressure, that's been a few of Rangers this season. So, at least you're not getting paid 30 grand a week to film under pressure. Before I say goodbye to my guests, what I will say as well, guys, if you're travelling in Glasgow tomorrow, be careful. To anyone over that side, please keep the city tidy, because we know what you can get up to sometimes. But to all the guys at home, I hope you have a good rest of your Friday night. Hope you enjoy the game tomorrow, and we'll see you back on Sunday. Good night, guys.